Now we're looking at team development. And when we think about how a team develops, there are two components to it. There's the content of what's happening in meetings and within the team, but there's also the process of how things are happening within the team or within a meeting or whatever. Some people will talk about task functions compared to maintenance functions, because very often we become, particularly as leaders who are wanting to achieve, who are wanting to get the job done, we often focus on this side of things, on setting the agenda, establishing goals, giving direction, initiating discussions, setting time limits, giving and seeking information, and summarizing different points. But actually, we also need to take time on some of the maintenance functions, which are actually at least as important, but often get neglected. So this is helping the group to do the job. Yeah. So things like recognizing when somebody has done a good job, giving recognition, listening well, encouraging participation, conflict management, not suppressing all conflicts, but as we were discussing in the last video, encouraging conflicts to be managed in a in a good way, and building working relationships, not just we're friends and we eat kaja together, but actually building those working relationships where we trust one another to speak wisdom to one another. Okay, let's look at how a team will, on the whole, they'll pass through 4 or maybe 5 distinct stages. To start with, the opening phase, when a new team is born, they'll go through a stage of forming. Often very energetic, there's a lot of high expectations. People want to know, where do I fit? What are we doing here? They need to be guided by a sense of authority and hierarchy. They need to know, what are we about? Because there's that energy, they want to do something. Quite quickly, they may well move into the next stage, which is called storming, which is where people then start realizing, is this what it's really about? And they may not be completely happy with the authority which has come and given them direction that they were wanting. It may be they're a bit frustrated about the goals. It may be that they're actually feeling a little confused. It may be that inside the team there is some competition for who has the power. This phase can be where some teams just get stuck and they never actually get out of that stage. But if they progress through it, they move on to another phase that's called norming, where people have started to resolve the discrepancies that they see between what they were expecting and what is actually working out, and they start to realize, okay, this is how it is. They start developing trust and respect for one another, and they are giving open feedback, both giving and receiving feedback. And actually, a number of teams will settle at this stage, and that's as far as they get. But there is a 4th stage, which is called performing, which is where both trust and cooperation have exceeded normal levels, and people really trust each other and they really want to work together because they believe in the objectives and the vision, and they will work really collaboratively and interdependently. So people recognize that what they do helps somebody else and what they do helps them. There are high levels of confidence. There is a shared sense of leadership. It's not just the leader who is giving direction. There are times where other people in the team will take on some of the leadership tasks and responsibilities. Obviously, the leader is still the one who is accountable, but people start sharing the load between them. And there is a sense of regularly delivering what they're asked to do in that team. And this really builds a lot of energy. Now, moving through these different stages, what's actually going on is 2 different things are moving. Do you remember we talked about content and process? Well, in terms of content, we've moved from what was basically a low productivity in terms of content to shifting towards a much higher productivity in terms of content. And on the other axis, we can see that this is about process. And to start with, there's very high morale. That low morale then kicks in, and it's still not very high at this stage, but it can come back if we can move it back up again. So, as the team leader, you need to be thinking about content issues and process issues to try and lead your team to grow in this way, so that they will not just get stuck at storming or norming, but they will actually be able to progress through to a state of performing. There is actually then a fifth state that was added to the model, which is called adjourning, which is where sometimes the team will wrap up business. They have done what they set out to do. It is completed, and so that team can cease to exist as a team. And in which case, this is a time of reflection and ideally preparing the team members for new directions, new things that they're going to be involved with. The task is complete and the team leaves. So there is this fifth one, but on the whole, people tend to focus on the four stages, which I can present in a slightly different way. So here we have forming, storming, norming, and performing. And again, we can look at task or content going this way, and maintenance or process issues coming across. If we look at task and content, initially the job of the leader is to make sure the job is getting done, setting agendas, establishing goals, giving direction, and so forth. Later on, as the team develops, actually the leader needs to drive that a lot less, because the group will start to do that itself. They will be checking the agenda. They will be bringing new points. They will be the ones who are making sure that the information is flowing well and the communication is flowing well, so forth. Maintenance issues. Initially, there's a lot of high morale. People are like, oh, I'm on a new team, and there's energy already flowing, so the leader doesn't need to do very much to start with. But at some point, the leader needs to focus a lot of energy on making sure that the team is growing, is feeling the recognition of success, that the leader is listening to how the team is growing and developing and changing, and whether there are conflicts that are developing. Are they healthy conflicts, or are they unhealthy and they need to be managed, not suppressed? Is the team building relationships? And if these things can be progressed by the leader, then at some point, actually the group themselves will be managing those things, and it becomes so much easier to manage once the team is right up there performing well. Do you remember we talked about situational leadership? Well, I think this does actually relate rather similarly to that, with the ideas of initially the leader needs to be giving direction, then it's about coaching, so giving lots of task direction and process encouragement, then moving on to supportive, where it's mostly about trying to just encourage the practices which are naturally developing, and finally the leader is able to step back a little bit and to delegate more and more to the person who has the skill and the confidence to do it. Actually, it is quite similar, in what is going on there. This is obviously for an individual, whereas this is looking at a team development, but actually it is quite similar. There's also a little quote that I would like to leave, to share with you, is this idea of you are never going to have an empowered and self-directing and well-functioning team until the leader is willing to share control. Only once you are delegating well, encouraging, motivating, and that the team themselves are wanting to progress, only then will the team really start to progress and accelerate into that stage of performing well.